CKUW 95.9 FM special presentation created by volunteers in the community, made possible by generous listener support.
We just heard Open Arms by Travis Scott.
And right now, we're going to do a live segment. I'm going to do my top 3, and Teddy's going to do his number 10, 9, and 7th favorite album because he's already talked about the other albums on previous years.
Yeah.
So I'll get it started. My 3rd favorite album of all time is All Things Must Pass by George Harrison. I first listened to this album only this year, and it's quickly rose to be one of my favorite albums. It's quite a long album, nearly an hour and a half, so I listened to it on my deck with a cup of tea going side by side and taking a few notes in between sides. I thought the lyrics and themes were very well put together. Many of the songs were very poetic, with songs like All Things Must Pass, the title track, being very in line with the themes throughout the album of finding peace of mind and reconciling with the past. It's basically the thesis song of the album. Art of Dying is all about reincarnation and being fulfilled in our souls and all that spiritual cool stuff. Beware of Darkness is apparently about what George thinks the meaning of life is, so that's pretty cool. And there's also many sweet ballads like Apple Scruffs, which is a jolly love letter to the Beatles fan club Apple Scruffs. There's also a few Beatles diss tracks like Run of the Mill, and arguably Isn't It a Pity was put on the album as Beatles commentary, even if it wasn't originally written about them. But overall, the songwriting and themes in the album are quite religious, and although I quite disagree with some of his ideas, like living life in a way to experience what happens after death, I still agree quite a bit with the sentiment of processing and moving on from past grievances. And even if I don't relate to plenty of the song ideas, George's full belief and passion for these ideas is what makes the album so special. I also just find the album to generally sound really nice and relaxing, so it's easily 10 out of 10 for me. My favorite song is the title track, All Things Must Pass, as it's helped me get through some hard days, so if there's any song on the album I think you should listen to, it's that one. And yeah, that's my opinion on that album.
And my 10th favorite album is Code 915913 by Al-90. Al-90 is a Russian ambient house, lo-fi house, outsider house artist. Pretty obscure, a little under 80,000 monthly listeners on Spotify, but his most well-known release is, of course, Code 915913. And it should be a lot more well-known because it's fantastic. You may remember me talking about Kindred by Burial last year, where I described it as a nocturnal, melancholic ambient EDM EP that helped me appreciate the nighttime more, and I'd say Code 915913 is in a similar vein. I'd also call it nocturnal, melancholic ambient EDM. And I just love that type of music because it made me see the beauty in the nighttime that I had previously been blind to. So many tracks on here are just so bittersweet and beautifully dark, like there's an angel beside you while you're walking on the street at 2 a.m. I love how much emotion this album conveys while sounding like it was recorded on a potato. And actually, when I say that it sounds like it was recorded on a potato, I mean that as a compliment. If anything, I feel like it helps convey its emotion more. Just the lo-fi. It's just such an amazing album that makes the city at night look like a black-skied heaven. Comparing this to Kindred by Burial, the nighttime, which is the nighttime album I placed higher, I definitely like the melodies in Code 915913 more than the melodies in Kindred. But I only really place Kindred higher because, I don't know, there's just something about that EP that just gives me goosebumps. It makes me feel something I've never felt before. But yeah, Code 915913, amazing album, pretty slept on. If you want, you can listen to it, and thus making it ever so slightly less slept on. What's your second favorite album, Ron?
Wow, I gotta give that one a listen, but yeah, my second favorite album of all time is Igor by Tyler, the Creator, and it's my favorite story album. The story of the album is very clean, fast-paced, and in my opinion, very well written. And I don't need to explain the entire story, but essentially it's a love triangle between the protagonist Igor, an unnamed love interest, who I'll name Frank, and his love interest's girlfriend. The album starts with the blooming love with Igor and Frank on songs like Earthquake and I Think, As the album progresses, the relationship becomes more evidently toxic and symbiotic on songs like New Magic Wand and Puppet, before they eventually break up, and the last song, Are We Still Friends, is Igor trying to salvage his relationship with Frank at least a little bit, and finally the ending is a single note on a synth that can transition easily back into the opening note of Igor's theme, the first song, implying that the relationship will continue in this toxic cycle. What I love about this really interesting and very followable story is that each time I listen to it, it feels like a movie album playing in my head, as I could create my own new music videos in my head each time I listen to it. And even if you don't pay attention to the story, you can still enjoy the album just for the vibes and the sound of the album, which I find to be very beautiful. The 80s synth-sounding production with very unique vocals and vocal pitching that separates this album from the rest of Tyler's catalog sounds really amazing to me, and the album flows really nicely from song to song, making for a very easy album to listen to in any setting. My favorite song on the album is New Magic Wand, kind of basic, but the production and atmosphere is out of this world, and the angry vocals and lyrics are very compelling to me. Overall, Igor is a very well put together story album that I could easily give a 10 out of 10, and I'm excited to hear your next album.
I do agree that Igor is an amazing album.
Yeah.
I love that album. But an album I love even more is my 9th favorite album, Dreamcast Summer Songs by Devon Hendricks. If you think you haven't heard of Devon Hendricks, there's still a chance that you probably have, because Devon Hendricks is the old and retired alias of JPEG Mafia. If you're still unfamiliar, JPEG Mafia is an experimental hip-hop artist known for his very eccentric beats and provocative lyrics. His 2018 album Veteran is what blew him up and catapulted him to experimental hip-hop stardom, but many would argue that his material pre-2016, before he went under the JPEG Mafia name, is just as good if not better. His most well-known album under his old Devon Hendricks alias is the Ghost Pop Tape, a cold and disturbingly depressing ambient R&B album made when he was enlisted in the military and was fighting severe depression and suicidal thoughts. But his second most well-known and acclaimed album under that alias is, of course, Dreamcast Summer Songs, and it's a very stark contrast to the Ghost Pop Tape, as it's a beat tape mainly consisting of very chill, mellow, and nice-sounding hip-hop beats. There's even debate on whether or not this predated the genre vaporwave, as it was recorded between 2007 and 2009. But proto-vaporwave or not, it's spectacular. The beats are so warm, melodic, chill, gorgeous. It's like the warmest, nicest day at the nicest beach, where you're just basking and melting in your hammock. Yeah. My favorite beats in particular are Game Shark and Crazy Taxi. Those beats are just unspeakably good, and they should be talked about more. And it's weird to think about how he barely had any fans at all when he made his Devon Hendricks albums. It really goes to show how much amazing music there is out there that no one has heard yet, just begging to be discovered. Makes you think.
Come on down to the wacky food store. We got green milk. It's green because it's lime flavored. It is not spoiled. We got blueberry bread. So if you see little blue spots around your bread, it is blueberry. All our bread is blueberry flavored. We got chocolate bananas. All the brown spots on the bananas are chocolate. Do not worry. And we got squishy fruit. Plenty of squishy fruit. It's squishy because it always makes it more fun. We're celebrating Halloween all year round, so we got cobwebs and fake cockroaches crawling around the store. Come on down. And thank you to our sponsors there. Now, my favorite album of all time is Food by MF Doom.
Really?
Yeah, and it's an entire album about food. MF Doom is my favorite artist, and I think this album shows off everything that made him truly a special rapper and producer. Almost every song revolves around using food as a metaphor for something that Doom wants to comment on or complain about. Beef Rap, the opening track, is about hip-hop diss tracks and feud, while also using many double entendres relating to food. Like the title itself, meaning a beef between rappers and a physical rap with beef in it. And the first line Doom spits on the album is, "Beef rap could lead to getting teeth capped," meaning in a literal sense that unhealthy food will get you cavities, while also meaning rap feuds will lead to violence. Some songs only reference food in the title, like Deep Fried Friends being a song about Doom's cynical view of fake friends and people leeching off him, and Rap Snitch Kanish's being about rappers snitching on themselves in music. While some of these stretches of songs don't seem to have much to do with food, the album as a whole feels cohesive mainly due to the production and song order. For example, the fact that the opener and closer are both very food-heavy songs. Cookies, the closer, has some of the most creative bars on the whole album that uses various cookie brands as a metaphor for something I can't describe on radio, but if you're of age, I would recommend looking into it because it's a great song. And the whole album ends with an instrumental segment that harkens back to the very opening instrumental, which makes the experience feel all wrapped up and cohesive. Speaking of instrumentals, one of the most impressive parts of the whole album is the production. A couple songs had some production from other people, but aside from 3 songs, the whole album showcases Doom's masterful production and sampling. He pulls food-related samples from a wide variety of sources. The album opens with a 2-minute instrumental sound collage featuring clips from stoner comedies, Frank Zappa, and old cartoon clips from Spider-Man and Fantastic Four, something that Doom is known for using in his music. There's a full 4-song instrumental interlude in the album with prominent samples from Electric Company skits and news programs where he uses the samples to paint a picture and convey his ideas, with news anchors talking about edible wrappers and then some funny recipes from the Electric Company. But my favorite song on the whole album is the opener, Beef Rap. It's the spawning point for the themes and ideas of the whole album, so if you listen to one song, it should be that one. And overall, with his infinitely inventive and impressive lyricism and his genius production, the album shapes up to be what I consider a perfect album, and it is my favorite album.
Yeah, I gotta re-listen to that album. Okay, my 8th favorite album is Velocity Design Comfort by Sweatshirt, which I already mentioned, but my 7th favorite album is Demo by the Brave Little Abacus. The Brave Little Abacus were a short-lived progressive math rock / Midwest emo band that formed in 2007 and disbanded in 2012. Their 2 most celebrated releases are by far their 2 studio albums, Masked Dancers and Just Got Back from the Discomfort, We're Alright, with the latter being the slightly more celebrated release. These are basically the only albums they ever released, but they also released 2 EPs, Demo and Okame, but their EPs get overshadowed by their much more popular and acclaimed studio albums, which I think is a big shame because Demo is by far my favorite release from them. Now, the Brave Little Abacus were fairly experimental and eccentric as they incorporated use of electronics and chiptune sounds into their music occasionally, and this is probably most apparent on their EP Demo, where it's almost bordering on Nintendo core at points. Yes, that's a real genre. That's a real hardcore punk subgenre. Yeah, especially with all of the video game samples. This was their first project as a band, dating back to 2008, and you can tell it's from the 2000s when you find out that all the songs on it were first uploaded onto MySpace. One thing that strikes me about this EP is that they were only 16 to 17 when they made it. That's my age. I could never. I don't know how a bunch of kids my age made an EP that kicks this much, but I don't know. Should I say the A word on radio?
But it's fine.
Okay. The opening track, The Buffalo, starts with a sample of the Game Boy startup jingle, and then you hear the vocalist Adam Demirjian scream. And let me tell you, that scream is enough to get you to listen to the entire EP and even the band's entire discography, at least for me anyway. I love this track so much. I love the guitar, the vocals, the trumpet. It's so beautiful, melodic, and warm. Like an emo band playing at the gates of heaven, if you will. Yeah. Now, we've been watching Ren and Stimpy in radio classes of late, which I find ironic because this next song, You're Not Me But Neither Am I, has a bunch of Ren and Stimpy samples in it.
Oh.
Yeah. Anyway, this is probably the hardest and rawest song in the EP, and it's amazing. I love the guitar and the You're Not Me, but neither am I, and yeah, it's just amazing. The next song, Imaginary Peaks, Imaginary Beasts, is the longest song here at 7 minutes. It's the most progressive, the most post-rock out of all of them. But despite that, it's probably my least favorite song here. But that doesn't mean it's bad at all. It's still amazing. The structure is very solid, the ambient bridge is gorgeous, and a fun fact, right before the clock struck midnight on my 16th birthday, I timed it perfectly to the switch in this song, like 5 minutes in. So, yeah. The final song, El Capitano, features samples of the Yoshi mounting sound effect and Baby Mario crying, which is pretty funny. Samples aside, this is my favorite song on the EP, my favorite song by the band, and one of my favorite songs of all time. The synthesizer that goes in the first half are awesome, and the vocals complement it very nicely. And that's really all I have to say about the first half of the song, but the second half is unspeakable. The guitars, the vocals, everything about it. It's the sound of the universe imploding, the sound of the sun turning into a big red giant and devouring the earth, the sound of the densest of stars exploding and flooding all of space with nothing but supernovas. It's insane. And then during the final part of the song, you hear the vocalist scream, "I am not a horse," a few times. Then he starts screaming it in reverse, so it's like Ezra Adomaya. And then at the very, very end of the song and the entire EP, you hear the vocalist scream just like you did at the very beginning. So it all just comes full circle. Overall, this EP is blistering and oozing with passion and energy, and it has such an unusually perfect and watertight track list. It's the sound of a band on fucking fire, and yeah, I have all of the praise in the world for it. Oh wait, should I not say that?
Oops.
I forgot. Okay. I chose El Capitano as the song I wanted to play during the show, but unfortunately I got snubbed by a random number generator, but that's fine. You just listen to it at home.
Well, that were our favorite albums, and next up is Teddy's trivia game.
Yeah.